This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Marine Corps Major Robin Higgins made her first public statement today. She did so as evidence increased that her hostage husband and fellow Marine is probably dead. When he was murdered and under what circumstances continues to be shrouded in mystery. The Iranian-connected killers still refuse to return the body. Our coverage of the hostage story starts with David Martin at the Pentagon.
Breaking a week of silent agony over her husband's fate, Robin Higgins gave no hint of the emotional torment she's been through.
Now is not the time for anger and bitterness, for recriminations and blame. Now is the time for calm reflection, for kind thoughts of the man who has brought us together. Now is the time to tell Rich Higgins that we love him and we miss him.
Speaking one day after she had been told the FBI analysis of this videotape concluded her husband almost certainly was dead, Robin Higgins did not say whether she accepts that judgment, nor did she seem to wish vengeance on his captors.
I'm also mindful of the fact that our president has agonized in a very profound and personal manner over my husband's fate. He has my prayers and my support as he tries to save the living and end the suffering.
Iran wants the return of hundreds of millions of dollars frozen in U.S. banks as the price for its help in freeing the hostages. Today, the White House ruled out any swap of assets for hostages, saying it would be perceived as ransom. However, U.S. officials say that if Israel were to swap its Shiite and Palestinian prisoners for the Western hostages in Lebanon, the U.S. would be prepared to release Iran's assets, claiming it was a separate and unrelated action. U.S. policy continues to be one of no concessions to terrorists. But if there is to be a thinly disguised deal, President Bush will have to bend that policy right up to the breaking point. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Defense Minister Rabin put some shape on the negotiating process today, saying that bargaining will be only the second phase. He told Hezbollah, stop making speeches and show us what you've got.
We'll do it in two phases. Phase number one, to get sign of life, that they are alive, the Israelis and the others.
The father of one of the missing Israeli soldiers called on a leading Jerusalem rabbi today, said he prayed that with the help of God, his son will return. But the Israeli general who managed the negotiations in past prisoner exchanges warned today that the family's ordeals have just begun.
It could take even 2 years. And we have to have a lot of patience. The families, first of all the families.
UN Under-Secretary Goulding called on Israel today to release its prime hostage, Sheikh Obaid.
But I also have to say that the kidnapping of Sheikh Obaid does not help.
Israeli officials disagreed and were angered by Goulding's charge, coming as it does after Israelis believe they've proven that the Sheikh was involved in the kidnapping of a UN observer, Colonel Higgins. While terrorism was being debated in Tel Aviv, it was being practiced in the desert 200 miles to the south. A lone gunman in a Jordanian army uniform burst into a communal farm a few miles from Israel's mountainous border with Jordan. He shot an American woman, held an Israeli woman hostage in a tool shed for nearly 4 hours, and was then killed by a single bullet from an Israeli sniper. Jordan quickly announced that he had acted on his own. Laurie Rosen from Englewood, New Jersey, was doing well in a nearby hospital. Today was her 25th birthday.
That I was shot in the neck. Luckily, it came out the other side. I was very lucky today.
CBS News learned tonight that if and when negotiations begin, Israel will not only be seeking the release of Israeli soldiers and Western hostages, officials here will also want to know what happened to 9 Lebanese Jews who were kidnapped by Islamic Jihad in Beirut over the last couple of years and have not been heard from since. Bob Simon, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
Concern mounted in Washington and Texas tonight for Houston Congressman Mickey Leland and other Americans traveling with him in Ethiopia. The chairman of the House Committee on Hunger and his party are missing. Their plane failed to arrive yesterday at a refugee camp along the Ethiopian-Sudanese border. Bad weather is hampering the search. From Washington, correspondent Mark Phillips reports on the searching, waiting, and worrying.
The mystery over what's happened to Congressman Mickey Leland, a frequent traveler to Ethiopia as a leader in famine relief efforts, has produced some rare cooperation between the United States and the Marxist government in Addis Ababa. But after a day of searching, the fate of Leland and 13 others is still unknown. The Texas congressman and his party were flying in an Ethiopian government plane from Addis Ababa to the refugee camp at Funido, where tens of thousands have fled the war in Sudan. The plane never arrived. There was bad weather in the area. But a plane believed to be Leland's was heard circling over Dembidolo, 80 miles away, where heavy rain also made the landing impossible.
The natural inclination may be to read the worst into it. I certainly would prefer to take the more optimistic view.
Many who attended a church vigil for Leland in Washington today preferred the optimistic view as well, that Leland's plane landed at another isolated airstrip in the area.
There are a number of airstrips in the vicinity. They're in very isolated and inaccessible areas, and this might explain why there has been no radio contact with the party.
President Bush spoke with Congressman Leland's wife, Allison, today to tell her that the U.S. was offering help.
We all pray that he's safe and that he and the others with him on that humanitarian mission will be found.
Congressman Mickey Leland has been a champion of refugee and famine relief in Ethiopia. Ironically, the bad weather being blamed for the disappearance of his plane is finally bringing rains to the region after years of drought and starvation. Mark Phillips, CBS News, the State Department.
Still to come on the CBS Evening News. Bruce Hall on a shiny new launch for a second-hand shuttle. And Bob McNamara on a tidy 10 acres where even the junkyard dog is gentle. Mission for the U.S. Defense Department, correspondent Bruce Hall reports on the return to space of the oldest shuttle in the fleet.
Delayed only slightly by early morning fog and haze, the refurbished Space Shuttle Columbia rocketed into space today on its first mission in more than 3.5 years.
4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff on Columbia and its return to flight.
Because of its classified cargo, Columbia's communications were blacked out by NASA, but brief conversations were monitored by CBS News. Columbia's launch means all 3 of NASA's shuttles, ordered rebuilt after the Challenger accident, are now back in service.
It's good to get Columbia flying again, and we need 3 flying orbiters in order to fly off the manifest that we've got. So from that standpoint, today was a big day.
Standing by for SRB separation, and we have SRB separation.
Late today, Columbia's crew reportedly deployed a new classified spy satellite off the coast of Australia, sending it on a path that sources say would cover the Soviet Union, China, and the Middle East.
It was generally going on the trajectory that we would expect it to go if it was carrying one of these low-altitude imaging intelligence satellites such as the KH-12.
While no pictures from these imaging satellites have been released, experts say they can produce remarkable detail from far out in space, cutting through clouds and isolating an area as small as a person on a blanket in a park. Columbia's crew is also expected to launch a secondary cargo, believed to be a Star Wars experiment, before returning to Edwards Air Force Base, probably on Sunday. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center.
The agreement by Central American presidents yesterday to disband U.S.-backed Nicaraguan Contras by Christmas is far from a done deal. The rebels and the Bush administration that bankrolls them are finding the agreement a bitter pill to swallow, and they're fighting it. Doug Tennell in Miami has more.
After 8 years in the jungles of Central America, the plan to virtually disband the Contras was met today with defiance in camps along the Honduran border. Contra commanders say their men will move from Honduras into the hills of northern Nicaragua rather than give up their arms.
We understand that over half of them want to go back armed and stay in the hills.
The fighting's going to start if half your men go back, no?
Yes, that could happen.
Central America's presidents called their plan a major victory for regional peace. It is also a setback for the Bush administration's Central American policy. The White House said today it is still too early and unfair to say the agreement marks the end of the Nicaraguan resistance. But Nicaragua's president, Daniel Ortega, called the plan a death sentence for the Contras. Washington wanted to keep the Contras alive in order to guarantee that the Sandinistas keep their promise and hold free and fair elections next year.
It's a loss in the sense that they don't have the pressure to put on the Sandinistas by having the Contras as a force in Honduras.
The election campaigns are already underway, and the Sandinistas say Washington is trying to influence the outcome. Opposition parties have received several $1 million from the U.S. government through private foundations. The Sandinistas charge they are benefiting from direct covert aid from Washington as well.
We've got, there are individuals that are pushing money, that are pushing advice, and that are rallying politicians, political groups, but also unions and also some youth groups in order to try to stage violent confrontations.
The Sandinistas have already expelled 2 American diplomats on charges of spying. They've also imposed some new restrictions on Americans in Nicaragua. Even during the height of the war, American citizens didn't need a visa to visit this country, but they need one today. Contra commanders say they have enough supplies to survive on their own in the hills until next spring. But if the peace plan is implemented on schedule, it would turn this army and a part of Reagan-era foreign policy into history before then. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Miami.
Possible new trouble for Jim Wright, the former Speaker of the House who recently resigned from Congress amid attacks on his ethics. Indications tonight that a federal grand jury in Washington is investigating some of Wright's book sale dealings. 2 groups that reportedly arranged to buy copies say they have received subpoenas. Japan's 3rd prime minister in 2 months will be former education minister Kafu. The governing Liberal Democrats picked Kafu as their party president today. Parliament will elect him prime minister tomorrow. Kafu's challenge is to make voters forget about the sex and financial scandals that brought down his 2 predecessors. Court order. The woman was 22 weeks pregnant. But only hours after being told of this surprise development, the Supreme Court struck down the lower court injunction barring that abortion. The Canadian lower court had ruled last month that the fetus was human and had constitutional rights. In a Tennessee divorce court today, testimony that highlights the challenge posed by science for ethics and the law. At issue is a 20th century technology that offers a final hope to some infertile couples. But the painful emotions involved are as old as humanity. Aaron Hayes reports.
I desperately want a child, yes. That desire has brought Mary Sue and Junior Davis to this, a divorce absolutely amicable until it came to custody of their 7 frozen fertilized eggs. Mary Davis wants children from them. Junior Davis does not.
I just do not feel that I want my child, if a child could be conceived from this, put into a single-parent home.
In court, Mary Sue Davis fought back tears as Junior Davis described his own parents divorcing when he was 6 and told of the pain of growing up in a children's home. Mary Davis told of the pain of trying in vitro fertilization 6 times. She said that failing to have children was painful for both of them. Throughout her testimony, they smiled at one another. At times, the broader implications of this case seemed lost on the 2. Saddened that their marriage ended, especially Mary, who says her only desire is to bear a child, and those frozen eggs are her last chance.
Yeah, I never know if I am going to find another husband to go through it again, but these are my children here.
This is her only chance. Her body can't take much more.
Their dilemma has thrown them to center stage of a national debate. What role must the law now play in the science of creating life?
In the future, a good lawyer will tell a in vitro clinic, you've got to make sure that the couple specifies what happens.
It has been said here, Junior Davis may be the first man in history allowed to change his mind after fertilizing an egg, to take it back, try to nullify conception. Others, including Mary Sue Davis, say it's too late for that. A decision from the judge is expected within a month. Aaron Hayes, CBS News, Maryville, Tennessee.
Old beyond their years, they are housed in detention centers set up by the California Youth Authority, which was established in the 1940s, when today's drug society was not even the material for nightmares. And now David Dow reports on their desperate past and bleak future in the latest of our investigative reports, An American Crisis, Children of Despair.
For Ed Quay, it is just another school day, another vigilant day with some of California's most troubled students.
We're looking for the tone of the group. Is there a lot of hostility in the faces or a lot of hostility in the conversation as the wards are walking by?
These are watchful times in Ventura School and 10 other state facilities that house some of California's most dangerous young offenders.
Is it that serious?
No, it ain't serious.
But can it be?
Times of overcrowding and stricter security. Times that reflect the harvest of America's streets today.
Kids today are much more gang-oriented than they were, much more apt to resort to violence if, for some reason, you get between them and what they want to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of people in here that shot people.
You afraid of those people?
Nah, not really.
Why not?
Because it's not nothing to be afraid of. It's happening every day.
And every day, the California Youth Authority inherits some of the survivors from the deadly street game of gangs and drugs. Officials estimate that more than a third of their wards are hardcore gang members. Another third, sympathizers or youths who join for protection. Henry Quiroga learned firsthand the dangers of going it alone.
I was stabbed 12 times, back, past Robles.
While you were in jail?
Yeah, when I was asleep. I just didn't want to play their games. There you go.
California has tried to fight juvenile crime, including gang violence, with longer sentences. But critics contend that has only jammed the facilities. Here, 2 inmates live in tiny cubicles intended for one.
These institutions have become powder kegs. It would not take a great deal for riots to erupt in these institutions because there are too many bodies in too small a space.
There are so many rival gangs represented here that separating them is virtually impossible. So authorities have taken other measures in an effort to minimize the chances of violent conflict. They claim the measures are helping, but more and more the reform schools resemble prisons. And at each of them, there is now a gang coordinator like Ed Quay, watching for any sign of trouble.
Do what? Well, you're all upset, though. Something's coming down your way.
Well, that's a gang stuff, you know.
They have even tried to strip the gangs of their identity, their colors, their trademarks, with mixed results.
All right, man, don't fly colors here, okay? What you have here is different gang graffiti. And
even on a baseball glove.
Even on baseball gloves. Get away from gang activity.
In gang awareness classes, officials appeal for change, knowing they will often fail.
3 months ago, somebody in my family, got killed, I don't like talking about it, because I don't even know who done it yet, But I know when I get out there, I'm a seek revenge, I'm a revengeful person.
And out there, also, the same attractions that made many here a statistic. Part of an 85% increase in juvenile felony drug arrests in just 5 years.
By the time I was 10, I was using cocaine and anything else I could get my hands on.
When did you start dealing?
About 12 or 13.
People getting killed, but that's still not stopping them from selling dope. Because that's an addiction right there. The money talks.
I'd make a good $300 a day, which was cool for me. 15 years old, that was good.
Almost every day, some of the wards return home. Chances are about 3 out of 4 eventually will be back. Many reinfected by the twin epidemics of drugs and gangs. David Dow, CBS News, Ventura County, California.
Richard Dortch, former top aide to PTL founder Jim Baker, today pleaded guilty to fraud and conspiracy counts in connection with the federal investigation of the television ministry. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Charlotte, North Carolina, said Dortch has agreed to cooperate with investigators. He had been scheduled for trial with Baker later this month. 2 other Baker aides were convicted of tax evasion in July.
Now, new scientific tests prove Heart's Blockade Repellent gives your pet total protection against fleas and ticks, or your money back. Unsolicited, here's what some satisfied Blockade users have told us.
We love Blockade spray for dogs. Dips never worked, and we spent hours pulling ticks off. I have recommended Blockade to all my friends.
We've tried everything on our greyhounds for fleas and ticks, even prescribed medications with no luck, until I used Blockade. Thanks for developing a superior product.
Heart's Blockade, guaranteed flea and tick protection that really works.
What's that?
Common Sense Oat Bran.
Common Sense should tell you it takes these 4 boxes to equal the vitamin and mineral nutrition in just 1 box of Total.
That makes no sense. How about 100% natural?
How about 16 boxes?
How about enough is enough?
Total, 1 bowl, 100%. That's more nutrition than any other cereal.
Now that makes a whole lot of sense.
If it's whole wheat Total, it's Total nutrition.
Miss.
There are headaches and headaches
headaches, there's aspirin and Anacin. The Anacin aspirin formula relieves headaches better than regular aspirin.
Feel better?
Not just better, better.
Anacin, better relief.
Uncle Charlie hasn't thought about his dentures all day, because he thought about Orifix this morning.
Orifix 'em. That'll fix 'em.
Orifix has extra hold to hold dentures tight day and night. Orifix 'em. That'll fix 'em.
Out in the western states, where they take particular pride in their scenery, what's usually an eyesore may be almost easy on the eyes. Bob McNamara is our guide for a tour that might even soothe the spirits of a junkyard dog.
It seems more art gallery than junkyard. The tires, the trunk lids, the tailpipes, even the last line of duty for VW vans, all neatly placed.
For instance, there's all of our bumpers lined up there, and we have all our wheels lined up here.
Dan Blake, co-owner of Blake Small Car Salvage near Erie, Colorado. Dan Blake, tour guide of perhaps America's tidiest 10 acres of junk cars. Much of it cataloged and contained in old buses parked end to end.
This is our Volvo interior bus, and we have like tail lights, gauges.
Wiper motors, speedometers here too, brake drums here.
Those are our drum trees, brake drums, the drum tree.
Need a fine spline jack shaft for a Saab 99? Hop in the Chariot and Blake's partner, Phil Bauer, can take you there. The can-do as much as the cleanliness that keeps customers.
They don't want to come out and stumble over a bunch of junk. You know, a father doesn't mind sending his daughter out here to get her part. She can come out and get her own part. He doesn't have to worry about her.
Broken down by nationality, Japanese cars are under Japan's flag, the VW's under the German flag. Dozens of old bugs here.
Old bugs are never gonna die. We keep as many of them around as we can. Like another one of our mottos, the more you got to sell.
Datsun drive shafts, Volkswagen hoods, and Volvo wing windows will keep some clunkers alive a few more miles. But it's not junk that's the deal here, not by definition.
Junk, you know, some people think trash is junk and junk is trash, but trash is trash and junk is usually something that can be recycled.
Recycled like old air filters.
They're sparrow nests. We used to have hordes of grasshoppers by this time of the year. And so I started making these sparrow condos, and now we have virtually no grasshoppers.
If mechanics like to call themselves wrenches, the boys at Blake's have their label.
Junkies. I'm a junkie.
There are 13 junkies here, 14 counting Cindy Lauper, the sleepy junkyard dog. And business could hardly be better, it seems, in a business most moms don't dream of for a son. But that, too, has been overcome.
I think my mom's pretty proud of me now.
Bob McNamara, CBS News, Erie, Colorado.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. See you tomorrow. Good night.
I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Last week, a whitewater rescue. Tomorrow, our Dr. Bob Arnott reunited with the woman he saved. Also, 30-somethings Melanie Mayron on CBS This Morning.
This is